Hello friends, welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Danny and today it's time that we talk about my 2024 book stats. I love these types of videos. I love to look back on the year and just look at some patterns from the year, some things about genres and age groups and the types of books that I'm picking up as far as mediums go and some other things thrown in as well. So I thought I would do another video. I do one of these every year. Something that I need to consider maybe for my 2025 like end of year content is doing a comparison between all the years that I've been on BookTube. So I didn't think to do that before this video, but that is something that I'll have to keep in mind for years to come, is the comparison between years. But for right now, I just have my 2024 stats for you. I do have some graphics, and so I am gonna scoot over so I can put the graphics up on the screen for you guys. I am also gonna be looking down at my phone because I have the graphs and all of the tables and things that I'm gonna be showing you on my phone. So we are going to start with kind of my big stats for the year, my overall things. It doesn't really separate a lot of things. So we're gonna look at the number of books I read. I read 156 books. This is larger than 2023. I read 135 books in 2023. I'm not like encouraging myself to read more and more every year. It just happened that I had more free time last year than I have in the past. And so that's why I was able to read more books. The average rating that I have per book is 3.852, which I'm happy with. I always want to be improving my reading taste and or my understanding of my reading taste and being able to select better and better books for myself. But I also don't think I ever want to get to a point where I have an average reading score that's in the 4 stars. I would love for it to be like a low 4-star maybe, but if I get any higher than that, I kind of feel like I'm not challenging myself and picking up books that are outside of my comfort zone, which inevitably lowers my rating, because I always want to be double checking to make sure if I didn't like something last year or 3 years ago, it doesn't mean that I'm not going to like it now. And so I kind of like this high 3 range for myself because I do think it means that I am picking up books that aren't necessarily for me, but that I think that's okay to reach out a little bit and be a little risky sometimes. My number of pages for this past year was 61,666, and that means that my average page count per book was 395.295. So unfortunately, I didn't meet my page count goal. I always have a page count goal. Well, the last 2 years, the page count goal has been 400. Before that, I think it was in the mid 300s, but I've tried to encourage myself in the last couple of years to make sure that I'm picking up chunky books. So it's a little sad that I didn't hit the 400 mark because I was so close, but I'm not mad at it. And I think that I did still pick up some really chunky books within the year. And I have the same goal in 2025 that I want to make sure that I'm reading those chunky books. And so I want to keep my average around 400. The next stat that I have for you guys is my genre split. And I'm not going to show you all of the genres that I track because there's just, there's a really large amount of them and they don't fit nicely on the screen for one. And it really, I don't think you would care if I read one book in a specific genre. So my top 4 genres are what I'm sharing with you. So the top genre is fantasy. Are we surprised? I had 86 books in the fantasy genre. And the average rating for my fantasy books was 3.937, which is amazing. And it was 55.13% of my overall reads. For horror, which was my next highest category, which I was excited about, I read 24 books. The average rating was a 3.5, which is a little lower than I would like, but it is a newer genre for me. And so once again, I'm trying to find my taste. And so I am picking up some things that I just didn't enjoy. And that was 15.38% of my reading. The next one was sci-fi with 16 reads, an average of 3.859, which I was really happy with. I have gotten kind of away from sci-fi within the past couple of years. And so, and really 16 books out of 156 is not a 10. It's 10.26%. But I would like to get more into sci-fi in 2025 because a lot of the books that I've picked up, I have dearly loved. And so that is one of my, not my main goals. I didn't put it on my reading goals for 2025, but I would like to read more sci-fi and get more into that genre because I do feel like I've kind of let that go by the wayside. And then my fourth genre was mystery with 12 books, a 3.792, and the percent was 7.69% of my reads were mysteries. I will say that all of the ones under fantasy, so horror, sci-fi, and mystery, those have all been risen from 2023, but I also read more books, so I don't know that it's like a significant difference. The next graphic that I have for you guys is my fantasy breakdown. Since I did read 86 fantasy books, I wanted to split those into subgenres or genre blends, because I did do a lot of genre blends. I need to do better about this though. And you can kind of see that at the very bottom we have general fantasy. So there were a lot of books. So 52 out of the 86 books that I read, I just labeled general fantasy and I didn't do like a subgenre or a genre blend. And I do think that there are some books that I have read that are general fantasy, but I think if I were to go back through the 52 books again, I'd probably find some on that list that could be put in a subgenre. But so I think I need to come up with a better system for tracking that in my spreadsheet. The top subgenre that I had was historical fantasy, which surprises me. I had 12 books in that category with an average rating of 3.625. The next highest was fantasy mystery, which that I expected honestly to be my highest, but I expected the rating to be higher. It was only a 3.7. And then the next highest was fantasy horror. That one had my top, or wait, is it? Yeah, it's my top rating, 4.214 is my average rating for my fantasy horror reads. That is a subgenre I have really enjoyed, so it doesn't surprise me that it's high. And then I have my cozy fantasies, which is a 4.125. I was a little surprised that that one was as high as it is, but there's only 4 books on there. So I just know the last 2 cozy books I read, I rated 3.75 because I just kind of thought that they were okay. But I mean, 3.75 and 4.125, it's not that far off. And then we have our lonely fantasy romance book that I rated a 1 star. So that's my breakdown of all of my different fantasy reads. The next graphic I have for you guys is a monthly breakdown. So you can see that my top 2 months as far as books read were August and October, which October makes sense. I read a lot of horror reads in that month. And I'm not sure what I was doing in August. I don't know why that that month kind of popped off, and I did have a lot more time from really June on, and you can kind of see that. In November and December I read some chunkier reads, and especially in December you can see that my page count is higher, even though I only read 11 books that month. I will say that out of the months that I read 11, well, maybe not. I was going to say that I had some higher ratings because the top 2 11s were in the 4 stars as an average rating, but then the bottom 2 were in the 3 stars, so it really doesn't matter. I do have some stats for you later on that actually, maybe I should do that now. Yeah, let's just do that now. So I have a stat that I was keeping. I did this last year, but I didn't like how I formed the graphic where I was comparing the ratings to the average page count of my books. And because of the fact that, you know, some of my ratings I would have 15 books and others I would only have 2, the average book page number didn't really, I mean, it made sense, but it just wasn't exactly what I wanted to show. So this year I just did a table. I just did 5 different categories and looked at how many books in each of those categories was over 400 pages. Because I think, in my mind, I feel like I rate bigger books better. Now, if I have some bigger books and I don't like them, I will rate them harsher than I would a smaller book that I don't like because I've spent so much time with it. But I feel like if I stick a book out to the end, if I stick a chunky book out to the end, I am more likely to rate it higher because I get attached to the characters. So I just kind of wanted to see if I could, you know, find a pattern with this. And I do think that this is interesting. So out of my 5 stars, I had 17 books this year that were 5 stars, and over half of them were over 400 pages, which I do think is telling. And then even my 4.5 stars, which was 29 books, that was 41.4%. I didn't look at my 4.75s. I should have just tagged those into that group, but oh well. And so even that, it's close to 50% of my 4.5 stars. And then when you jump down to my 4.25s, it lowers a little bit, 37.5. 3 to 4 stars. So any book in that range was 26.4, which is the lowest percentage of 4-star ratings, which I think shows that if I am going to read a book that is chunky, I am probably going to rate it on the higher end, 4.25 or higher, and on the lower end, less than 3 stars, because then we get to less than 3 stars and it jumps back up to 31.8%, which is still not like a super high percentage, but I should next year, maybe I can do this again and also include DNFs, because I bet the number of DNFs that I do that are larger is probably higher, because I am more likely to stick through a shorter book because it's not going to take me as much time. That would be an interesting stat. I didn't do that. I didn't look at DNFs at all this year. I need to get better about tracking my DNFs. The next stat I have for you guys is the year range. I did this in the very beginning, or in the middle of last year in 2024, to show you guys kind of what types of books I was picking up. And I find it interesting, and I did decide to look at ratings as well. So from 1922 to 2000, I only read 3 books, which I rated, the average rating was a 4.08. From 2001 to 2010, I read 10 books with an average rating of 4.125. 2011 to 2020 is 46 books at a 4.05. And then just from the last 3 years, 21 to 2024, 97 of my reads came from that. And of course, the average is going to be lower because I read more books. But I just think that spread is very funny, that the last 3 years are the ones where most of my reads are. I do love a good backlist book, and I need to get better about reading books that are on my backlist and on authors' backlists, but I do enjoy picking up newer books, and so I'm not mad at this. I just think it's interesting. Next, I want to talk about authors. I do this every year where I track whether or not an author is new to me or known to me, and then I also track whether or not I was reading a debut or an established author's book. So the first chart that I have for you guys is new to me or known to me. So I'm reading books, the new authors. So I started 90 books this year that I read were from new authors, and then 66 of the books were from authors that were already known, which I do like this like almost even split, because I read so many series, and so I don't want to ignore authors that I have read before because otherwise I wouldn't be able to finish series. And then looking at debut authors versus established authors. Now, if I say a debut author, I'm not saying that the author is still debut, but I'm reading their debut. So I might be reading V. Schwab's debut author or debut novel, but years later. So I think this is very similar to last year's stat. I have 41 books were 41 books were debut books, and then 115 were from established authors. And I think I like this. I want to be picking up debuts. I don't want that number to ever probably go under 25%. But I also don't know that I want it to be higher than that. So I think I'm happy with this. Next, we have our age breakdown, and this is pretty much the same every year. I look at adult, middle grade, and YA. And so you can see that primarily I read adult books. 142 of the books were adult. And I was kind of surprised that middle grade and YA weren't flipped. So I read 10 YA books and 4 middle grade. And I do typically enjoy middle grade more than YA, but I think I get YA recommended to me more than I get middle grade recommended to me. And so that might constitute why I'm picking up the 10 YA instead of more middle grade. Something else that hasn't really changed from last year, I think it's pushed even more towards one particular item, is the reading mediums. So I track whether or not I listen to something on audio, if I listened to it on or read it on a Kindle, if I physically read, or if I did mixed, means immersive. So that could mean that I had an ebook with the audio or a physical book with the audio. And you can see 117 of the 156 books that I read were on audio. And I know that there's, the people on the interwebs that don't think the audiobook reading is reading. I don't agree with you. And I don't, if you want to have that opinion, that's fine. I think that reading an audiobook is the same. I mean, it's obviously different than reading a physical book, but you are still reading. So I think that I have really leaned into audiobooks because of how busy my personal life has been. And I have had more free time the past 6 months, but I think I had gotten so used to multitasking while I read, being able to clean, being able to take a walk, being able to, just walk around my house and like declutter things while I'm reading. And I feel like I'm accomplishing more. And so I have leaned into audiobooks and I like it. So yeah. Then I have 9 books that I read physically, 21 mixed because I do like reading immersively when I can. And then I read 9 books on my Kindle. My Kindle's always probably going to be my lowest, although I guess it matches with physical because I read my Kindle at night and I usually only read one Kindle book at a time. So I think this I don't see changing. I would like to read more physical books in 2025, but I really enjoy audiobooks, so I'm not going to say that I'm going to stop reading them. The next stat that I have for you guys is series versus non-series, and I just think this stat is funny. So this is my graphic for whether or not I was reading series or non-series. So half of my books are series reads. Now that could be that they are series starters or series continuations or, series ends. But yeah, so half of my reads have been series, which doesn't surprise me at all. I love a good series, but I am glad that I'm reading some standalones as well. The last stat that I have for you guys is a new one, and I am going to do more with it in the years to come because I just really think it's fun. And that is my library reads. And specifically, not only how many books I read from the library, but also I wanted to talk to you guys about how much money the library has saved me this year, just because I think it's a fun number to keep. And so I'll talk about the numbers of books I read first. So I read 36 books from my physical collection. So books that I own, or I shouldn't say physical collection, but books that I own. So whether or not I own them via ebook or if I own them physically. And then 120 of the books that I read this year were from the library, which I just think is an astounding number. I know that I read a lot from my library. It's just, I don't like to purchase books before I read them. And so the library is always going to be my first option if I can read a book from the library. But I didn't think that it was that significant of a difference. So I did like keeping track of this. I think next year I would like to keep track of in each month and what events I had going on in that month, whether or not I'm reading from the library or if I'm reading physically. I wonder if like readathons have any impact on that or not. And then the last thing I have is the amount of money that the library has saved me. And I would like to keep more information on this next year as well, like maybe how much money I spend on books every month versus how much money I'm spending at the library. I'm not spending money at the library, but how much money the library is saving me. So what I did to find this number was every book that I didn't own in some format, I went and looked for the price at Barnes&Noble, and I just wrote it in a spreadsheet next to the books that I'd read. And if I had purchased every book that I had gotten from the library this year, so 120 books, if I went out and purchased 120 books from Barnes&Noble, $2,137 would have been my total. So the library saved me over $2,000 this year. And it also saved me from buying a whole bunch of books I didn't like because I had, I think, 14, I didn't look at that. I think I had 14 2 stars and 6 or 7 1 stars. And so that would have been 21, 22 books that I just really didn't like that I had bought. Now, obviously those are full prices. If I hunted for things in half price bookstores and things like that, I'm sure it would be cheaper, but I just went with, Barnes & Noble's price. And I think that that's a really interesting number. So I'm definitely going to keep that next year. I think it's going to be fun to see how much money the library saves me every month. Those are my stats from 2024. Let me know in the comments down below which one you found the most interesting, or let me know a stat that you kept in 2024 that you have found interesting. I would love to chat with you guys in the comments. If you're not feeling chatty, just leave me some type of calculation symbol, so plus sign, division sign, whatever, in the comments so I know that you're here with me. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you have a lovely evening, and I will see you in the next one. Bye!